How can I breed ball pythons? How can I even do it?
These brothers my guys, know that they fly, know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side, CJ Ike, now I gotta roll with ice. These brothers my guys, know that they fly, know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side, CJ Ike, now I gotta roll with ice.
Hey guys, how's it going? This is Paul with Spheric Reptiles, and I thank you for tuning in to this video, in particular on how to choose a ball python breeding project. I think now more than ever, you really need to consider the projects that you're going into. And so what I've come up with is 10 things that can probably help you get on your way successfully. I mean, because just to say I want to breed snakes, yeah, you can do that. But then if you breed certain snakes, then what will the end result be? And I think you have to think with the end in mind, even in the beginning, so that way you have a real life measurement point to work on so that you can reevaluate when you get there. The first thing that you need to do is you need to understand the ball python genetics. So when I'm talking about the genetics and the science behind it, because that's what you're basically working on with ball pythons, because it's all python regis, right? So you're either going to have an incomplete dominant trait that will be expressed from one copy from one mom and one dad, or one dam and one sire, or you can have a double recessive. So recessives work the same way, whereas as the incomplete dominance, the only difference is you need 2 copies for it to be expressed, whereas with the incomplete dominant, you only need 1 copy so that it's expressed over the normal gene or the normal expression. Second thing that you need to consider is market demand. Because if you're going to put all this energy into something, you damn sure want to make sure that there is a demand for the product that you have coming out. They're not selling Tacomas over here just because they like the truck, but people actually, there's a demand for it, just like there is for the Chevy Silverado. Those are the 2 best-selling trucks in America right now, for the full size and the 1-ton or mid-size. But think with the end in mind, right? So long term. So that's another way of end in mind. So you don't want to have a product that has a high market demand right now, and then come 2 years or even 3 years later, now it's not. And there's a lot. All you have to do is look at Morph Market, and you can look at someone who sells a lot of animals, and you can see how the prices start to go down over time. Because if you click on Morph Market, I like using Morph Market, by the way, for all of the analytical data that we have, because it's the #1 selling platform for pretty much all things reptile and invertebrates. So yeah, go into there. So you select it down, and then you pick sold, and then you can see all the animals that were sold, and you can type in the type of trait that you're looking for, the pattern that you're looking for, and you can see, like in 2021, 22, 23, what that animal sold for compared to now. And you can see either if the demand is still high or if the market demand has diminished. And if it's diminished, so is the price. And that's another subject. That could be from too many of one animal being out there, or it could be that people just don't want it. Maybe something else took over. After you determine your market demand, the next thing you have to determine is your short-term and your long-term strategy for breeding. So will you produce pet quality animals that are $500 or less, or realistically $250 or less? Or will you produce those mid-cap animals? So I say mid-cap animals that are around, $500 to maybe $1,500 for entry-level breeders? Or will you go to the high-end animals that are right now probably about $1,750 and above? So that's all the way up to $50,000 for those people that are high-end breeders and they're trying to get a jump. So that's up to you, though, to determine what your short-term and your long-term breeding goals are based on the type of animal that you're trying to produce. That's very important. Put that in your business plan, so that way you have something in writing that will kind of act as your benchmark, so that when you're at the show And you're thinking about that impulse buy because all animals look good at a show, right? They have the lights on them. You got people talking friendly to you, and boom, out comes your, the cash. You know what I'm saying? So, but yeah, short-term and long-term goals, you got to consider that. After you've done those three things, you got your science, you got your market, and your short-term and long-term goals, which is the third thing. Then now you got to establish your budget, because you still got to live when you're producing these animals, when you're trying to come up with a strategy for producing something, right? So you're trying to produce widgets or you're trying to produce ball pythons. It's the same thing. You got to have a budget that still works within your world, not someone else's, but your world, according to the goals that you set in place. So that in itself sets you up for success. If you know what your budget is, then you just won't throw caution to the wind, and then you look up and now it's out of control, and now you have to sell off your stock. That's not what you want to do when you get into any type of investment for the long term, right? So establish your budget, stick to those animals, and the number one thing your budget will tell you is your entry level for those different price points that you'll be getting into for those traits. So if it's a very rare incomplete dominant or recessive trait, maybe it's only one seller and that person happens to be in the Netherlands. Well, there's a higher cost for even getting that animal to you and for doing that transaction. Or if it's maybe a triple recessive, then you have to look and do your research and find out how much your entry level would be for that. But what I would say to budget for this, so you want a 2.4, all right? So you want 2 males and 4 females, and for you that can be either visuals or it can be hets. But if you breed a visual to a visual, you get the visual. If you breed a visual to a het, then it's probably about 50%. If you breed a het to a het, then it's about 25%. Then the remaining ones, because there will be a normal kick out from that, will be 66% het. So those are the statistics that you got to learn from number one when you learn the science behind the genetics for ball pythons. Number 5, you got to make sure that you got the space, and you have to make sure that you get good equipment. Did I say that right? You got to make sure that you get good equipment, because the number one thing that we found out, even after we set our budget, is that if you buy small bows for a snake that, in the case of ball pythons, that'll get 3 feet for the males, 4 feet, if they're a little older, but basically 3 feet to 6 feet, then they quickly outgrow those bows, or they end up turning them over so much, in the case that we have tubs still, that you end up buying different bowls. And so you end up with a lot of extra bowls. And I think that's been our only mistake that we've made so far, is the bowls. But as you see from this one photo, you can DIY your rack when you're starting off, because I really feel like the quality of your animal is more important in the beginning. Unless you just want to shit out the money before you know if you can even do it, then you can buy an ARS or a Freedom Breeder rack system, or even a Vision rack system. But I would say make sure that you have the space and the equipment. So we also have an incubator, like you see, we got the WH240 and we have an ultrasound. When it came to our business, for us, I thought that getting thermostats that would last, making sure that we had tubs or housing for our animals that were escape proof and that were easy to clean and that could house our animals effectively. And then I thought that the number one thing we should do is eliminate those things that would be risky. So the incubator is something that eliminates that. We chose to go with the professional model. You don't have to, you can DIY. And then we chose to go with an ultrasound because I'm just not good at palpating. So I wanted to make sure that the things that I'm not good at, that I could, if I can buy it, then it's worth the investment. But that's something that your budget will have to set for you, for yourself, as far as your space and equipment. So number 6, you really need to increase your knowledge of ball pythons, because there's a myriad of things that can happen with them. Even though they're generally hardy, there's still a lot of things that can happen to them. Like they They could get a parasite from a food item. They could, you got to know the different diseases like scale rot, mouth rot, any type of disease to look for, the health of it. But you got to increase your knowledge. And I think the best way to do that is experience. So if you're just now starting out in breeding, you don't have any experience. Even if you think you do and you watch YouTube and you say, oh, I know how to do this shit. No, you don't. You don't know how to do anything. So get a mentor. So there's a lot of people who breed ball pythons. It's the #1 reptile that's bred in America, or probably any country, I think, whenever I look at Morph Market. So if you're looking for a mentor, it doesn't have to be somebody that you actually know, but more than likely, people are willing to share the ins and outs or their mistakes with you, and also their successes with you, so that you don't make those same mistakes that a lot of people make. So definitely increase your knowledge. So read books, and you can see we got a reptile care, I guess, encyclopedia. So it shows all the diseases, all of the virus, anything that can happen to your reptile is in these 2 books. I'll put the link down in the description so that you can go on Amazon and order it too. But I warn you, they are not small books, and there's 2 books, but I think that these 2 books cover everything that you would ever want to know about reptile care. So number 7, make damn sure that you get animals that are healthy and of good quality, because you're talking about breeding. So if you start off with an animal that's not healthy, then do you really want to pass those genes on to the offspring when you're trying to develop something that's going to have your name behind it and you're trying to get these animals to produce eggs? Do you want to, whether you willingly or unwillingly, reproduce animals that are defective, that have a higher likelihood of kinks? Or like in the case of the spider, not to say that the spider isn't a good animal, but how the spider has the wobble. So you have to determine for yourself what you want to breed. And like if you're thinking long term, that's also going to have to be that you're having to introduce new blood in with these animals. So you might buy another animal so that you can say, when these offspring are born, I'm not inbreeding as much. Those of you that deal with dogs, you know a lot about inbreeding and line breeding. Try to limit the amount of line breeding that you do if you can. Definitely don't do any inbreeding. And I think that's the #1 thing. But healthy animals, and you also want to get animals of good quality. So get the very best example of that pattern that you're looking for when you're trying to do your ball python breeding projects. So number 8, and this one is one that you really need to pay attention to if you start a business breeding ball pythons. You need to know the legal laws for your state. So you need to contact the Wildlife Commission for your state. You need to look at the county laws for the area you live in, as well as the city laws for the area in which you live in. Because in the case of Dallas, the only 2 snakes that you can actively keep as a pet and sell are the ball python and the boa constrictor. Now, there's a lot of hearsay as to why it's that way. It was kind of rumored that a city council person said, I want to make sure that my ball python and my boa constrictor are able to be kept because that's what I have. And so the rest of the snakes, retics, anacondas, Burmese pythons, rosy boas, carpet pythons, all these other snakes that they're not even harmful. They're just, if people are irresponsible with anything, that they can get out of hand. But yeah, so that's why in Dallas, there's no reptile pet stores. It took a while for me to find it out. I actually found it out from talking to Danny and Renee, who came all the way from California over to the NARBC, and they gave me this shirt, so I just want to give them a shout out. But yeah, so I found out a lot about the laws in Dallas from people that were coming here that actually would sell other types of animals. Even though they sell ball pythons, they're more experienced than I am and well versed in the laws for each one of the shows that they attend. Number 9, and I'm trying to get through this as quickly as possible. Network. So don't network, but you need to network and go to reptile shows And I did a video, and I'll put the thumbnail up here. And as you've seen, a lot of the thumbnails I put up are on topics that we've already done. But when you go to these shows, talk to these breeders and ask them specific questions as it relates to what you're trying to do, what you're trying to get into, especially if the breeder has the project that you are trying to get into, because they're already probably like 3 to 5 years ahead of you. So in doing your research, you should know, who's the lead player with each one of the traits that you're looking for. The better thing to do is go and just make friends, because the reptile community is still so small that you can actually get to know people relatively quickly just by attending shows. And if they see you around enough, they'll know that you're serious about it, or that you're more serious than just asking a question if they've never seen you before. So definitely networking and becoming familiar and kind of friends with these people. A lot of them will become your mentors. It definitely will help. The last thing, and I promise this is the last thing, this is number 10. So number 10 is maintain accurate records. So if you're breeding, not whether you start a business or not, because that's something totally different, but you definitely want to keep accurate records regardless, right? So you need to know when you're breeding your snakes or you're raising them up, what they eat, when they eat, what size prey item they eat, what temperatures do they like, the breeding, so when does this female go? Last year she didn't go to this male. Do you want to waste your time and introduce that male, or do you need to get another male? And should I sell this male because none of the women liked him? I mean, all of these things help you dictate how successful you will be in your breeding projects. Also, how many live rodents did we buy? How many frozen thawed rodents did you buy? Where'd you buy them from? Were you happy with the price? Did you have any issues with snakes getting sick, and what were the requirements for that? But record it all, write it all. And if you have to get a wall calendar or a desk calendar and write it out per month, that's what I do. And I just kind of summarize it at the end of the month. That way it's right there in front of me on my coffee table, and I can knock out when they shed, what they ate, I used to write even when they poop, but I stopped doing that. But I write down the days I do the water changes. I mean, maybe it's overkill. Baby, is it overkill?
Sometimes.
Sometimes, she says, sometimes it's overkill. I mean, when it comes to the animals, one thing I say is I do enjoy my animals. I enjoy the time. That's why I always tell people, enjoy the time that you spend with your reptiles, because I truly enjoy spending time with the reptiles. I mean, whether it's cleaning them, I talk to them, even though I know they can't talk back. But hell, but I take it to such a level because behind me, all of these are my babies, and they all depend on me for everything. So if I drop the ball on one thing, it could be husbandry, or it could be that they defecated in the cage and I left it all week and now they're sick, or their water's no good. So you see what I'm saying? So keeping those accurate records, all of that goes back to the number one thing, and doing your research on ball pythons first and the science behind ball pythons so that you can better care, and so everything else just comes together. But I really, really hope that you enjoyed this video on how to start a ball python breeding project. I think ball pythons are going to be around for a long time. In the 90s, when people started making different pattern morphs for reticulated pythons and ball pythons, and then when boa constrictor morphs started, everybody always said it wouldn't be around a long time. But I definitely know that it's here to stay because there's infrastructure behind it and there's people behind it. So I encourage you to definitely, if you can breed an animal, breed it, because it puts less stress on their native environments. And the more people we have breeding, and breeding different things, and breeding even those animals outside of ball pythons that are from areas that their habitats being destroyed, guys, we got to take that pressure off of those native habitats. So, and that's why a lot of people are moving to monitors. A lot of people are moving to other snakes, frogs, everything else, because bad things are happening where they live. So it's up to us as a reptile community, to pick up the ball and move these animals forward, or they might be wiped off the face of the earth for the small areas that they live. I know it's sidebar, right? But it's my video. So If nothing else, guys, please like, comment, and subscribe to this. You can hit the notifications if you want. If you don't want to, that's fine. I'm just glad that you tuned in today. And lastly, enjoy the time that you spend with your reptiles and enjoy the time that you have with your family. And thank you.